An old storyteller sits by a fire, telling the story of how the riders fell. Repeating this story is enough to get a man killed. You might know his name if you grew up reading Eragon. But he isn't just a storyteller. And the boy sitting in front of him isn't just a farm boy either. This is Eragon, Book 1, the story that started everything. A farm boy, a dragon, and an empire that has stood for a century, about to collide. Let's go back to the very beginning. There is a boy in the mountains with a bow and 3 days of bad luck, and he is about to find something that will destroy his life and replace it with something larger. The story doesn't start with Eragon. It starts with a failure. Night in the spine, the wild, unmapped mountains at the edge of Alagaësia that the Empire never fully controlled, where the trees grow wrong and compasses drift and soldiers don't come back. A figure waits in the dark with a dozen Urgles at his back. He is tall, with scarlet hair and red eyes, and he is waiting for an elven convoy. 3 white horses carry 3 elves, a guard, a spearman, and a young woman with a leather satchel. The Urgles shoot, the guards fall. The figure in the dark, called Shade, a body possessed by spirits, the most dangerous thing a person can become, sends a wave of red magic at the woman's horse. She jumps free. She reaches into the satchel. She speaks a word and the bag erupts in emerald light, and then it is gone. The contents vanished, sent somewhere else, somewhere the Shade cannot follow. He is furious. He kills several of his own Urgles for the satisfaction of killing something. He takes the unconscious elf and leaves. He wanted whatever was in that satchel. He did not get it. What he didn't get landed somewhere in the spine, in a flash of green light, in the cold dark of an untouched mountain forest. A 15-year-old boy hunting a lame doe finds a stone that isn't a stone. Eragon has been in the spine for 3 nights without a kill. His family needs meat for the winter. He spots the doe, draws, fires, and the ground explodes. In the scorched grass there is an oval stone, smooth and blue and faintly marbled, roughly the size of a man's fist. He picks it up. It is perfectly smooth, harder than anything he has touched, and slightly warm despite the cold night. He thinks about what it might be worth. He brings it to the butcher Sloane, who refuses to buy anything that came out of the spine. His wife died there, and the mountains are his private terror, and no price is worth touching anything from them. The blacksmith Horst intervenes and buys Eragon's meat out of his own pocket, diffusing the situation. Eragon can repay him in the spring. That evening Eragon's uncle Garrow turns the stone over in his hands. He is a careful man, not easily impressed. Merchants arrive in Carvajal, late and unsettled, with rumors packed in alongside their goods. Urgles moving south in larger numbers than usual. Varden raids on imperial supply lines. A general sense that the empire is being tested and is not enjoying it. One of the merchants, a jeweler named Murloc, examines the stone. Harder than diamond, hollow, unknown material, worth nothing to anyone he knows, which means worth nothing here. In the tavern that evening, 2 merchants praise the empire with the enthusiasm of people who depend on it. Eragon disagrees publicly, which is either brave or foolish depending on who is listening. And then Brum speaks. The village storyteller is old, bearded, with the air of someone who has carried a great deal of weight for a long time and learned not to put it down. He tells the history of Galbatorix, how he was a rider, how his dragon was killed by Urgles, how he begged the Rider Council for a replacement dragon and was refused, how he went mad with grief and revenge and eventually found 2 allies among the riders, stole a dragon hatchling, and started a war that ended with almost every rider dead and himself on the throne. The dragon he stole became Shruken. The rider order that had kept peace for thousands of years was gone in a generation. Eragon listens like it's a story. It isn't. There is a tear on Brom's cheek when he finishes. He wipes it away before anyone notices. One night the stone makes a sound. Not a crack. A high, sustained note, like a finger run around the rim of a glass. Then it falls. Then it splits open, and out of the darkness inside comes a head. Dark sapphire scales, hollow eye sockets filling with color, a row of spines along a neck that is still unfolding. A dragon. Eragon reaches out. The hatchling presses its head against his palm and the contact is like falling into cold water. A white oval burns itself into his skin, a mark that will never fade, called Gedway-Ignasia, and the pain is enormous and immediate. Then something else. A mind, tentative and curious and very hungry, brushing against his. He feeds it dried meat from his pack. It eats everything he has and looks for more. Then it curls on his bed and goes to sleep. He stands in his room in the middle of the night with a glowing hand and a dragon on his mattress and makes the only decision he was ever going to make. He keeps it. He hides her under a hawthorn tree in the forest, a spot he can reach morning and evening without being seen. She grows faster than anything he has ever watched grow. A week in, she doubles in size. 2 weeks in, she reaches his knee. Her scales are the color of deep water and hard as metal under his fingers. The mental connection grows with her. He can send images. She sends feelings back. Hunger, contentment, irritation when he is late. The range extends every few days until he can feel her from a mile away like a constant warmth in the back of his mind. The first word she says to him, clearly through the bond, is his own name, Eragon, as if claiming him. He has never felt less alone. He visits Brom on the pretext of research. He needs a name for her, and the only person in Carvajal who knows anything about dragons is the old storyteller. Brom tells him about the history of the Rider Order over tea. The elves who came from across the sea, the first war with dragons, an elf named Eragon who found a dragon egg and chose partnership over conflict and created something that lasted thousands of years. The riders as peacekeepers, as scholars, as the reason the various peoples of Alagaësia found ways to coexist. Eragon asks about dragon names. Brom lists them: Thor, Ingethold, Vermund, others, and then, almost under his breath, one more: Saphira. Something shifts in Brom's face when he says it. Just briefly, just enough. Eragon goes back to the forest and speaks the name aloud. The dragon goes very still. Then she sends back warmth and recognition, the mental equivalent of yes. Roran leaves. 2 years older, built like someone who has spent his whole life working with his hands. Eragon's cousin and closest companion announces he is going to Theransford to work in a mill. He wants to earn enough to build a house and marry Katrina, the butcher Sloane's daughter, which is its own complicated problem. Their Uncle Garrow gives him money and a blessing and 2 pieces of advice that sound, in retrospect, like a man who knew he was running out of time to say things. Work hard and never let anyone own your mind. Roran goes. The house is emptier than Eragon expected. He keeps not showing Garrow the dragon. Horst finds him in the street with a warning. 2 strangers in Carvajal, dressed in black, asking about a blue stone. They move wrong. Their voices are wrong. Nobody can quite say how, but every instinct is pointing the same direction. Eragon creeps close enough to hear one of the conversations. The strangers are talking to Sloane. And Sloane, the butcher who refused to touch the stone, who has hated Eragon since before Eragon understood why, is describing the stone and describing Eragon with the specificity of someone who has decided that someone else's safety is worth less than his own comfort. Eragon tries to leave the village quietly. And in that moment one of the strangers locks eyes with him and something happens. Not magic exactly, more like being pressed against a wall by someone much larger. He cannot move, cannot think clearly. Brom's arrival, casual and chattering about nothing, breaks the moment. The strangers turn away. Eragon breathes again. These are Yazuac. He will learn that name later. What he learns right now is that they found him in Carvajal, which means they know the stone was here, which means they will go to the farm. He runs to Saphira. She panics before he can explain. The urgency in his mind transmits before the words do, and Saphira responds to fear the way a large predator responds to fear, which is by removing them both from the situation immediately. She grabs him and she flies. He has never been on a dragon before. He cannot get down. He cannot steer. She carries him into the spine and lands in a forest clearing and wraps her wings around him against the cold. And he lies there in the dark understanding that she just saved his life and that it may have cost him everything. He goes back in the morning. He sees the smoke from the air. The farmhouse is in pieces. The barn is still burning. He finds Garrow in the ruins, alive barely, his skin covered in white burns that weep fluid and do not look like anything a fire would cause. Saphira lowers herself so Eragon can lay Garrow across her back, and they carry him to Carvajal on a board, flat under her belly, one long terrible flight between the mountains. Garrow does not get better. The burns do not respond to anything Gertrude the healer knows. The fever does not break. Eragon waits with scraped legs and his own fever at Gertrude's house, visiting the room where his uncle lies and listening to the breathing change by increments. One night he knows. He walks in. The room is quiet. Garrow is in clean clothes. There is a branch of hemlock on his chest and a silver amulet around his neck. The small rituals people perform for the dead when they cannot do anything else. He has been gone for a little while already. Eragon cries, loudly without caring who hears. He asks the empty room what kind of god would do this. Saphira, from the forest, says one word: live. He lies there with the question and comes back with the only answer that makes the future feel possible at all. Find Yazuac. Make them answer for this. It is not wisdom. It is the only direction available. He decides to go. He takes supplies before dawn. Skins from the tanner, meat from Sloane's shop, taking back what the man's cowardice cost him. Brom is waiting at the tree line. The old storyteller has a bag packed and a look on his face that is not quite surprise. More like something expected has finally arrived. He looks at Eragon's hand, at the glowing mark on the palm. You seem to have enough meat to feed a dragon, he says. Eragon goes still. Brum knows. He says Saphira told him, and Saphira is already in the air above them, confirming it. Then he unwraps a sword. Red blade, sapphire ruby in the hilt, a weapon that has a quality of age and use that puts it in a different category from anything Eragon has held before. He says it belonged to a rider once. He gives it to Eragon without naming whose it was. Then he explains the Yazuac. Not human, they fear sunlight. They have served Galbatorix since before most living people were born. They are dangerous in a very specific way that regular weapons address poorly. He says he is coming with Eragon. He says he wants to see what happens. This is a lie, but it is a useful lie, and Eragon is in no position to interrogate it. They buy horses in Theron's Ford. Brum demonstrates that a tollbridge guard can be robbed by the same person he just extorted, if that person is quick enough and confident enough about it. Eragon rides a horse he names Kadok, after his grandfather. Saphira flies above them, visible only as a shape against the clouds if you know to look. At the edge of the valley, there is a tower on the mountainside. At Oxil, this is where Galbatorix killed Vrail, the last leader of the riders, the last real obstacle to the Empire. Eragon looks at it. Looks at the valley behind him. The farm that isn't standing anymore, the village that has roared somewhere north. Then he turns and rides east. 3 days of dead grass and cracked wind. Brum teaches Eragon to fight every evening with wooden staves. Relentlessly, without encouragement, treating bruises as the only feedback that sticks. Eragon learns faster than he expected and slower than he needs. Yazuac is a trading town on the Nina River, and when Eragon and Brum ride in, it is completely silent. Not the silence of an early morning or a town at rest. The silence of absence. No smoke from chimneys, no animals in pens, no movement anywhere. They ride to the market square and find the reason. The people of Yazuac are in a pile. Dozens of them, stacked in the center of the square. Eragon gets off his horse and is sick in the street. Brum is not sick. He is looking at the tracks. Urgles, a large group moving through fast. They did this. They are still in the town. 2 of them come out of an alleyway at a run and Eragon is suddenly in a dead end with stone walls on 3 sides and 2 large bodies blocking the 4th. He has his bow but there is no angle. He reaches for the sword but they are too close. Something builds in him that is not quite a decision. More like a refusal, violent and total, the refusal of a living body to accept what is coming. His lips move. The word comes out, Breezinger. The arrow in his hand ignites blue. It hits one Urgle and the explosion knocks both of them into the wall. Eragon hits the ground and lies there while his own body processes what just happened to it. Using magic for the first time extracts something physical, a tiredness so deep it feels structural, like the bones themselves are complaining. Brum was right about Breezinger. He has been right about it since the campfire on the plains when he said the word and fire appeared. Eragon just never asked. He is asking now. Darrett is alive, which is almost a shock. Small town, river crossing, walls that are not walls exactly but barricades made from furniture and farm equipment. Archers on every roof. They have been locked in for a week. Urgles came through the area in numbers nobody here has ever seen. Not raiding parties but migrations, hundreds of them moving west. Urgles by nature don't do this. They are solitary, territorial, spread across the mountains in small groups that avoid each other. Something is driving them together and pointing them in a direction. Brum listens to the reports with an expression Eragon is starting to recognize. The expression of a man who already knew something was wrong and has just been told how wrong. He doesn't explain. He buys supplies and they ride on. Tirm is clean and prosperous and smells of the sea, and the man who opens the door to them looks like he was expecting bad news and has decided to accept it gracefully. Giad is tall, with a scar across his forehead and the particular quality of sadness that belongs to people who made a significant bet on the right side of history and paid for it personally. He and Brum talk like men who haven't seen each other in years and are not certain they should be relieved. Brum sends Eragon to stable the horses. Eragon does this and then uses a simple magical technique Brum taught him, extending his hearing to listen through the door. He catches fragments. Gilead and Egg, the word Varden used not as a distant political faction but as something more personal, something like our people. A queen who doesn't correspond to any queen in any kingdom Eragon knows about. He learns that Brum sent the egg. He learns that Brum was in Carvajal on purpose, waiting. When Brum comes to collect him, Eragon doesn't say what he heard. He files it for later. The purpose of their visit. Giad has been operating as a supply contact for the Varden through his merchant business, and he has been losing ships. Someone is either intercepting them or informing on him. The records in the city's administrative fortress purchases, manifests, shipping logs might show a pattern that points to Eragon supply routes. The problem is that the administrator, a man named Brand, refuses access to the records for any reason, at any price. They have to get in another way. While Bram negotiates and Giad researches, Eragon wanders into a herbalist's shop because the sign outside is strange and he is curious. The inside is a living garden. Plants growing from every surface, roots visible through glass jars, a smell of green and old wood and something else that is harder to name. On the counter there is a large cat with tufted ears and a mane of white fur and eyes that are very clearly not a cat's eyes. The cat says, "I have a message for you, Eragon." Eragon has met a wercat, one of the oldest kinds of people in Alagaësia, companions to kings and elves for centuries, creatures that have watched empires come and go and retained the particular authority of things that know they will outlast you. The werecat's name is Celembum. He never speaks in public. He is speaking now. His owner is Angela, who is small and fast-talking and significantly older than she looks, and who has a set of actual dragon knucklebones that she uses for divination. She throws them. She speaks words in the ancient language and reads the result. Her prophecy for Eragon runs across 6 dimensions. An extraordinarily long life. Choices so significant that many paths close with each one. A curse upon his shoulders. Something double-edged, part of it leading toward death. Permanent exile from Alagaësia. He will leave and not return. A great romance with someone from a noble family. And a betrayal from within his family. He sits with all of this. He asks Angela if she is certain. She says certainty is a different category from prophecy, but yes. She laughs when he mentions that his traveling companion is named Bram. He asks why. She doesn't explain. Celembum pulls him aside before he leaves and says 2 things privately. The first, when the time comes and you need a weapon you cannot find elsewhere, look beneath the Manoa tree. The second, when all seems lost and your power is insufficient, go to the Rock of Cuthian and speak your name to open the Vault of Souls. Eragon does not know what any of this means. He writes it down and keeps walking. The fortress records are locked behind a man who will not be moved by normal means, so they move him by abnormal ones. At night, with a bribed guard providing a window of access, Eragon and Bram and Giad walk into the records room and spend an hour sorting through trade manifests in the dark. They leave with what they need, a pattern in the oil trade, a substance called seether oil, rare, expensive, with no obvious legitimate use in the quantities being purchased. One buyer, consistent over years, always shipping south toward Dras-Leona. One connecting thread in all the manifests. Hellgrind. Eragon spends the journey asking Bram questions until Bram decides to answer them properly. The full account, given over a campfire, goes like this. Alagaësia has been in a cold war for decades between the Empire, which is Galbatorix, and the Varden, a resistance organization operating out of a hidden city. The Varden want to restore the Rider Order and end Galbatorix's rule. The Empire wants to eliminate them. At the center of this is the question of dragon eggs. 3 remain in the world. 1 is Saphira. 2 are in Galbatorix's vault. Whoever the remaining eggs hatch for will determine the next generation of riders, and the next generation of riders will determine the war. This is why Galbatorix has spent decades trying to find them, and why the Varden sent one of them toward the spine, beyond the Empire's reach into the territory of someone who might, if the stars aligned, become what was needed. Bram killed the last of the Forsworn, the 13 riders who betrayed their order to follow Galbatorix. The last of them was Morzan. Bram killed him in Gilead. During the same operation, he and Giad stole the egg, Saphira's egg, from the Empire and sent it toward the Varden via an elf courier. That courier was ambushed. The egg ended up in the spine. Eragon found it. None of this was accidental, Bram says. Some of it was planned. Some of it was luck. He is not able to clearly separate which was which. Eragon asks why Bram was in Carvajal. Bram says he was waiting for something that might or might not arrive, and living his cover in the meantime. He says no more than this. Eragon files the parts that don't add up. There are several. He breaks his wrist falling on wet moss while looking for water. A genuinely embarrassing injury that takes him out of his sword hand for weeks. He is learning to fight left-handed, which is its own slow education. When the Urgles find them, there are 12. Their leader says, "Our master wants to speak with you." Eragon declines by attempting to knock them unconscious with a single area spell. Giurda, a word meaning break or strike. The spell works. 11 Urgles drop. The 12th runs before the effect reaches him, and takes his knowledge of a dragon and a rider directly back to whoever sent them. Eragon lies on the ground afterward for 2 days. The spell was too large, the expenditure too complete. When he wakes, Bram is cleaning a sword and not in a generous mood. 3 Urgles escaped alive, which is 3 Urgles who can report what they saw. The information is out. The words their master come back to him. Not Galbatorix, the Urgles spoke of him differently, with the specific weight of recent command rather than distant authority. Someone else is in play. One afternoon, Eragon experiments. He says the seeing word, Dromercopa, and tries to find Saphira in a pool of water. It works. He finds Brom on the road. Then, on something between impulse and instinct, he tries to find the woman from the dream he has been having since Tirm. A face he has never seen, belonging to a person he has never met. The image comes clear. Stone walls, a single candle, dark hair. A face looking directly at him with eyes that register his presence. She sees him. This is supposed to be impossible. No one can feel themselves being observed through scrying. Brom, when Eragon tells him, goes quiet in a way that means he knows more than he is about to say. The woman exists. She is in a cell somewhere. And whatever connection allows Eragon to find her through a method that should not work, that is a question that will need answering. The weeks of travel and daily sparring accumulate in Eragon's body the way training accumulates, invisibly, until the day it becomes visible all at once. On an evening above Lake Leona, with the water spread out below them in the dying light, Eragon presses an attack against Brom and keeps pressing past the point where Brom's defense would normally adapt, and Brom's sword goes out of his hand and Zarok's flat is against his throat. Brom stands very still. He says, "Of all the warriors I have known, only 3 could have done that to me." Eragon waits for the explanation. It doesn't come. The silence between them has the quality of a door that won't open further. He is better than his teacher now, or close enough that the distinction doesn't matter in a fight. He is not sure what to do with that. Dras-Leona is everything Tirm is not: chaotic, dense, layered with the specific grime of a city that has been doing commerce for centuries without much interest in cleaning up after itself. Beggars with missing limbs work the gates. The streets narrow as they go deeper in. The smell of the lake sits underneath everything. To the east, rising above the city profile, for stone spires. Sheer, nearly vertical, the color of old bone. They look like something that grew rather than something built. This is Helgrind, the religious object around which Dras-Leona has organized itself for generations. The cathedral in the city's center is built to echo its shape. The cult that worships it drinks blood in its ceremonies and offers fingers and hands to its service as a form of devotion. Yazuac live there. Not metaphorically, they live in that rock, in that formation that humans have made sacred, sheltering inside the thing people travel to venerate. Eragon and Brom take a room at the Golden Globe Inn and begin the work of finding where the Seether oil was delivered. The trail leads south and east, toward the rock. They are close. Everything that has been building since a boy found a blue stone in a mountain clearing is almost finished gathering itself. Brom is more careful than Eragon has ever seen him. This might be wisdom. It might be fear. Eragon is young enough that he cannot clearly distinguish between the two, and in this case, he is not sure the distinction matters. Eragon and Brom had been looking for the Yazuac for weeks, and in Dras-Leona they finally found a lead. The city was dark and cruel. Narrow streets, starving children, soldiers everywhere. The local religion worshipped Helgrind, a jagged black mountain just outside the city walls. The cathedral in its honor looked like a piece of it had broken off and landed in the middle of town. Brom spent a day posing as a wandering bard, performing songs for the palace servants. People talk around bards, and what he heard changed everything. Every full moon, 2 slaves were sent from the palace with a month's worth of oil. They walked to the base of Helgrind and never came back. That was where Yazuac were hiding. Eragon and Brom had a plan. Take the place of the slaves. Get close. End it. But Eragon made a mistake. He wandered into the cathedral alone. It was empty, cold, the kind of silence that feels like a held breath. He knelt at the altar out of something like respect, and when he turned around, the Yazuac were standing in the doorway. He ran. Through side rooms, through a kitchen, through a walled garden with no exit. He made it over the wall by the skin of his fingers. He lost them in the market crowd, but the damage was done, their cover was blown. They escaped the city at full gallop, Brom using magic to scatter the guards. Eragon holding the gate open with a single word long enough to get through. That night they camped off-road. No fire. Eragon thought he saw movement at the edge of camp. He stepped toward it, and something hit the back of his head, and the world went black. When he woke up, his hands were tied. Brom was unconscious beside him, and the Yazuac were there, standing over them both, going through their bags. They found Zarok. They recognized the symbol on the scabbard. They spoke about delivering Eragon to their master, alive. They were debating whether to kill Brom when arrows came out of the dark. A stranger was in the treeline. He fired again. The Yazuac bolted, but on the way out, one of them hurled a dagger, and Brom threw himself in front of it. The stranger stepped into the firelight. Young, well-armed, calm in a way that didn't fit the situation. His name was Murtagh. He helped Eragon up, checked the damage, 2 broken ribs at minimum, and then turned to Braum, with Eragon's hand pressed against a wound that magic cannot close fast enough. And in those final minutes, he does something Eragon never expected. He washes his hand. The brown dye runs off with the wine, and beneath it, a silver mark, the same mark that glows on Eragon's own palm. Yazuac, the sign of a dragon rider. Braum was never just a storyteller. He was a rider. His dragon's name was Saphira, the same name now carried by the young blue dragon sleeping nearby, as if the name itself had been waiting to be passed forward. Braum had survived the fall of the riders, had watched his dragon die, had spent decades in Carvajal, a village at the edge of nowhere, waiting for exactly this moment. The gruff old man who taught Eragon to fight, who pushed him harder than anyone, who knew the ancient language and the layout of every fortress in the empire. He had been protecting Eragon from the very beginning, and he never said a word. Eragon had thought he was losing a teacher. He is only now beginning to understand what he has actually lost. Before Braum goes, he gives Eragon a final gift. 7 words, spoken in the ancient language, to be used only in a moment of absolute need. And then, with a faint smile, now the greatest adventure. He does not wake again. Eragon stays beside him until there is no question left to answer. Saphira howls, a sound that carries no language, only grief. He buries Braum in the canyon where he fell. Using magic, Eragon shapes the rock over the grave, carving the old man's name in runes. But Saphira does something no one asks her to do. She lowers her head and touches the sandstone with her nose, and the stone transforms. When Eragon looks up, the grave is sealed under a slab of pure diamond, transparent as glass. Through it, he can still see Braum's face. It is the most beautiful thing he has ever made. He did not make it alone. In the morning, Murtagh was still there. He'd gone hunting. He came back with rabbits and a question. Was Braum, the one who stole the king's dragon egg, hunted it across the continent, and killed the last of the Forsworn in single combat? Yes, said Eragon. That was him. Murtagh asked if he could stay. He was a fugitive, he said. He didn't work for the Farthen or the Empire. He wasn't loyal to anyone but himself. But he knew how to fight, and Eragon's ribs were broken, and the Yazuac were still out there. Eragon said yes. He didn't fully trust Murtagh. He tried to read his mind and found a wall so solid it might as well have been made of stone. That was rare. Only trained magicians built defenses like that. There were things about this stranger that didn't add up. But Braum was gone, and Eragon was alone, and the woman in his dreams was bleeding from her fingertips, somewhere in the Empire, and there was no one else. So they rode east, together, into the desert. A young man called Murtagh has been watching from a distance. He is well-armed, well-trained, and alone, which in this part of the Empire means something. He offers to travel with Eragon. He does not explain why he is here, or where he came from, or what he is running from. And Eragon, who also has secrets, does not press him. But before they leave, Saphira tells Eragon something Braum passed to her privately. A name and a city. Dormnad. Gilead. A man who can lead them to the Farthen. Yazuac, the red blade he has carried since Braum gave it to him. He knows now what Braum did not say aloud. This sword was taken from Morzan, the most feared of the Forsworn, in single combat. It is a dead man's weapon with a dark history. Murtagh recognizes it the moment he sees it, and his reaction is not admiration. It is something closer to dread. They ride north. The weeks that follow have a strange, suspended quality. Eragon recovers. He trains with Murtagh every day. Sword forms, footwork, endurance, and the gap between them narrows slowly. Neither of them talks much about the past. What they share instead is silence and survival, and the kind of trust that forms not from conversation but from watching someone fight beside you and not run. Eragon searches every town they pass through. He has been dreaming of a woman, an elf, though he does not know that yet, her face still and pale, her eyes closed, trapped in a kind of suspended darkness. He does not know who she is. He does not know why he sees her, but the dreams come every night, and they do not feel like imagination. By the time they reach Gilead, the city is a silhouette of watchtowers and military banners against a gray sky. Gilead is Empire territory in the most complete sense. A garrison city, a fort disguised as a settlement. Murtagh goes in alone. Eragon waits. Saphira circles high overhead, invisible in the clouds. Murtagh returns with confirmation. Dormnad will meet them at dawn. The Urgles come before sunrise, from 2 directions at once, heavy and fast, armored in iron. Eragon burns 3 of them with a word. Breezinger. Fire, in the ancient language, spoken as a command for the first time with full intent. It works, but there are too many, and the 4th one catches him across the back of the skull with a club. His last coherent thought is for Saphira. Fly. Then nothing. He wakes in a cell. Stone floor, iron door, a narrow window that shows nothing useful. There is water and food, and after the first sip he understands there is something in both. A narcotic, slow and patient, designed not to knock him out but to keep him just below the threshold where magic becomes possible. The Empire has done this before. They know what a writer can do with a clear mind. Eragon throws the food out the window. He stops drinking. He sits in the corner and does what Brum taught him. He breathes, focuses, waits for the fog to thin. Takes time. But the Empire is not the only patient thing in this cell. While he waits, he sees something through the bars of the corridor. 2 guards carry a woman past. Unconscious, limp. It is the woman from his dreams. The door opens. The figure that enters is not a soldier. He is pale, too pale, the kind of pallor that does not come from avoiding the sun. His hair is red, almost orange. His teeth, when he smiles, are filed to points. He moves without sound, and the air in the cell seems to change when he walks through it, as if something other than a man has come inside. This is a shade, a sorcerer whose body has been taken over by spirits from beyond the world's edge. There are stories about shades. Most of the stories end badly for everyone who encounters one. He wants Eragon's true name. In the ancient language, a person's true name is not a title but a definition. The exact word that captures everything you are. If you know someone's true name, you own them completely. The shade circles the cell and asks, and implies and offers, and his voice has a texture that makes it difficult to think clearly. Eragon answers him in the ancient language, Du Sundavar Frioer, death to the shade. It is not his name. It is a declaration. The shade smiles, and notices that the food is untouched. He leaves. By the following night, the narcotic has faded enough. Eragon opens the lock with a thread of magic, steps into the corridor, and immediately walks into 6 armed soldiers. He reaches for his power. There is almost nothing there. Then 3 of the soldiers drop with arrows in them, and a bearded figure steps out of a storage alcove with a bow and the expression of someone who has been waiting longer than he wanted to. Murtagh. He bribed a guard, stole a uniform, and spent the better part of a day hidden in a building he had no business being in. It is not an elegant plan. Eragon finds the elf cell. Her door opens. He gets his first clear look at her. Dark hair, angular features. She is barely conscious. They have her. They need to leave. Now, the shade is already in the hall. What follows is not a fair fight. The shade is faster than a human body should be able to move, and stronger. Shade toys with them. Murtagh shoots once. The arrow punches through the shade's shoulder. The shade pulls it out without stopping, still smiling. Murtagh shoots again. This time between the eyes. The shade screams and collapses into smoke and cloth. The body dissolves. The clothes fall empty to the floor. The room is silent. No one has ever killed a shade and lived to tell of it, except for 2 names from old legend. Murtagh looks at the pile of fabric on the floor and says, with characteristic economy, that he is not sure it counts as dead. Saphira comes through the roof. She does not open it. She dismantles it. Stone and timber giving way as she drops into the hall from above. Landing between Eragon and the door, Saphira launches through the gap she made in the ceiling and into the night sky above Gilead, and the arrows that follow them are lost in the darkness before they find their mark, except for 2, which find Saphira's wing membrane and the muscle of her shoulder. She does not stop flying. They land in a clearing hours south of the city. The elf is alive. Barely. Eragon examines her by firelight. What he finds turns his stomach. Scars layered on scars across her back. Burns. The kind of damage that is applied methodically over time by people who are very good at it. She has been in Gilead for a long time. He heals her through the night and into the morning. Saphira lends him her strength. Without her he would have stopped hours earlier. By dawn the worst of it is repaired. The elf breathes steadily. She does not wake. The pursuit from Gilead is relentless. Patrols with dogs on every road south. Riders visible on the horizon. Saphira carries the elf. The horses begin to tire. Eragon sleeps in the saddle because there is no other option. When they reach the Rammer River, half a mile of fast, cold water, no bridge, fog sitting thick over the surface. Saphira solves the problem the way she solves most problems. She picks up the horses and moves them. The soldiers' torches appear on the northern bank just as the last load reaches the south side. They ride into the Hatterack Desert. The Hatterack is not a place that accommodates travelers. It is red and gold and merciless, and the heat by midday is a physical weight. Water is the problem, there is none visible, and carrying enough is not possible at pace. Eragon tries the obvious solution first. He attempts to transform sand into water. The attempt nearly kills him. The energy cost of changing one substance into another at scale is not linear, it is catastrophic. He lies gasping in the shade of Saphira's wing, having learned an expensive lesson. Then he thinks differently. Not transformation. Summoning. He reaches down through the sand with his mind and finds what is already there. Moisture in the deep layers, slow and cold and waiting. He draws it up. The word is gentle, the cost is small, and water seeps through the sand around his hands. Saphira, watching him work, observes that she feels at home here. The heat, the space, the absence of walls. She says it without sentiment, but Eragon hears something else in it. A creature beginning to understand what she is. They cross the desert. The Beer Mountains appear first as a misunderstanding. What Eragon had taken for a range of hills on the horizon resolves, over the course of a day's riding, into something that has no ceiling. The peaks disappear into cloud cover so high that the cloud cover seems wrong, too high, belonging to a different sky. The lower slopes alone dwarf anything he has seen. Murtagh says nothing for a long time. Then he had heard stories. Eragon begins to understand, standing before those mountains, that Carvajal was not the world. It was barely a corner of it. He reaches into the elf's mind carefully, the way Brum taught him, touching gently, announcing himself before going deeper. The response is immediate and violent. A psychic blow that throws him back, and for a moment the inside of his skull is white. He calls out in the ancient language. He is a rider and a friend. The pressure eases. Slowly, with enormous caution, contact is established. Her name is Arya. Her mind is old in a way that has nothing to do with appearance. Ancient, structured differently than a human mind, full of things that do not translate. She is an ambassador of the elves, the courier who carried the dragon egg, Saphira's egg, between the elves and the Varden for over a century. She was captured by the Shade, not through any failure of her own, but through circumstances she does not fully explain. And she is dying. The Empire used a poison called Skilnabraf, rare, slow-acting, designed for high-value prisoners who need to be kept just alive enough to be useful. Without the antidote, she will be dead within 3 or 4 days. The antidote exists only among the Varden and the elves. She gives him directions. A lake called Kos, the Myrna, fed by a river called the Beartooth, which falls from the mountains in a waterfall. At the waterfall, strike stone against stone 3 times, and speak. I am a rider and a friend, in the ancient tongue. The Varden will come. Then she withdraws, and does not speak again. Eragon tells Murtagh the plan. Murtagh's response is quiet and controlled, and underneath the control there is something that has been building for weeks. He will not go to the Varden. Eragon pushes. Murtagh explains, as precisely as he can manage. The Varden will not accept him. Not because of anything he has done. Because of who he was born to. His father, he stops himself before the name comes out. His father is someone the Varden would kill Murtagh simply for resembling. His only crime, as he puts it, is that he exists at all. It becomes a fight. Fists, briefly, before Saphira sets both of them on the ground with one paw and holds them there until they are finished. The name does not come out. An Urgal scout appears on the ridge above them before Murtagh can finish the sentence, and the argument dies in the necessity of the moment. The Urgals are not alone. At the foot of the Beer Mountains, a column of slavers, mercenaries who operate in the lawless space between the Empire and the mountains, surrounds their camp. Their leader, a man named Torkenbrand, sees the unconscious elf and calculates her value to the right buyer in Gili AD. Saphira ends the calculation before it goes far. Eragon reveals himself. The slavers scatter. Torkenbrand surrenders. He puts down his weapon, raises his hands, says the words. Murtagh steps forward and kills him anyway. One clean stroke, no hesitation, no announcement. Eragon is furious. Murtagh is not. He explains, with the patience of someone who has had to explain simple things to people who were not raised in the real world. A man who knows their faces, their direction, their cargo, and their destination cannot be released. The Empire pays well for that kind of information. Mercy here is not mercy. It is a gamble with Arya's life, and with theirs. Eragon does not agree. He says so. Murtagh does not argue further. He cleans his sword. Neither of them is entirely wrong. Neither of them will forget this moment. They ride into the shadow of the Beer Mountains. Arya breathes shallowly on Saphira's back. 3 days from death if the directions were right. Fewer if they were not. Murtagh rides beside Eragon in silence. The question of his father still hanging between them like a door that was almost opened. Somewhere behind them, Urgals are moving east in numbers that do not suggest a raid. They suggest an army. Somewhere ahead, behind a waterfall at a mountain lake with a name in the ancient language, the Varden are waiting. Eragon has 7 words from a dead man that he has not yet used. He hopes he will not need them before this is over. The waterfall is louder than Eragon expected. He stands at the edge of the lake called Kos, the Myrna, water thundering down from the Beer Mountains above, and shouts the password into the noise. Nothing answers. The Urgles are behind them, close enough that Eragon can hear them in the valley. Saphira circles overhead. Murtagh watches the tree line. Then Saphira understands what Eragon does not. They are on the wrong side. They run through the waterfall itself. The current nearly takes Eragon off his feet. Murtagh catches him. Arrows that kill the Urgles come from slits in the rock wall that were invisible from outside. Someone has been watching. Someone is letting them in. A door opens in the cliff face. Behind it stands a dwarf barely reaching Eragon's elbow, built like a boulder, with an axe and an expression of professional suspicion. His name is Auric, and he pulls Eragon out of the water. The door closes behind them. The sound of the waterfall disappears. The tunnel ahead glows with pale light. They have made it. The relief lasts approximately as long as it takes for a bald man in violet robes to press a knife to Murtagh's throat. The twins, no other name, no other identity, are the Varden's telepathic interrogators. They already know Eragon is a rider. What they want to know is who the armed stranger beside him is. Murtagh says nothing. One of the twins enters his mind and finds nothing useful. Murtagh holds the wall. He is brought under guard into the mountain, and Eragon follows, and none of this is how he imagined the arrival. That night, in a sealed room deep inside the mountain, Eragon asks the question he has been carrying for weeks. Why is Murtagh here? What is he running from? Murtagh tells him everything. His father was Morzin, the last of the Forsworn, the most feared man in the Empire after Galbatorix himself. Murtagh grew up in a castle, the son of a monster, watching his mother flinch whenever footsteps came down the hall. There is a scar on his back. Morzin threw Zarok at him when he was a child, drunk and angry over something that had nothing to do with Murtagh. The blade caught him across the spine. He was 3 years old. He tells Eragon about the dinner with Galbatorix, the king's cold hospitality, the barely concealed threat beneath every word. The night he understood that staying meant becoming the next instrument of the Empire's will. He tells him about riding out in secret, about being hunted, about Tornak who died so that Murtagh could live. He followed Yazuac because he was already following Eragon without knowing it. I have no more secrets, he says, and for the first time in the telling, he does not look like a man carrying something. Eragon sits with what he has heard. The son of Morzin. The same Morzin who was Brom's closest friend before the betrayal. The same Morzin whose sword Eragon has been carrying on his belt since before he understood what it meant. In the morning, Farthen Dûr opens up around them. The crater is miles wide, a mountain with its top removed, and at its center, rising from the floor to the ceiling like something grown rather than built, stands Trondheim. The dwarves call it a mountain city. It is more accurate to say it is a mountain that became a city so gradually that no one noticed. White marble corridors, crystal lamps that never burn out. And at the center of the central hall, suspended from the ceiling, Isidar Mithram, the star sapphire, a jewel the size of a house, cut to resemble a rose in full bloom. It has taken generations of dwarven craft to create. It is, without question, the most beautiful object Eragon has ever seen. Saphira launches herself upward through the shaft above the hall, spiraling into open air, and makes a sound that Eragon has no word for. Ajihad receives Eragon in a chamber that communicates authority through restraint rather than decoration. He is tall, broad-shouldered, with dark skin and a shaved head, and he sits behind a table covered in maps and dispatches with the focused attention of someone who manages crises for a living. He listens to Eragon's account without interrupting. Then he issues instructions. Arya will receive the antidote, the nectar called Tunavor, already prepared. Eragon is free to move through Trondheim, but the twins will monitor him. Murtagh will remain under arrest. The son of Morzin cannot walk free among the Varden regardless of his personal history. The risk is too structural to be outweighed by individual testimony. Eragon understands the logic. He does not like it. These two things are both true and will remain in tension throughout his time in Farthen Dûr. He finds Angela the herbalist in a corridor near the healer's quarters. Eragon has met her once before in Tirmu, where she read his fortune and declined to share most of it. She seems unsurprised to see him here, which itself is unsurprising. Celembum looks at Eragon for a long moment. Angela says nothing about her own prophecy. She just watches him with the expression of someone who already knows how an argument concludes and is waiting politely for the other party to catch up. Auric leads him to Hrothgar. The king under the mountain sits in a throne carved from the mountain itself, and he speaks in the measured cadences of someone who has learned that every word said in a throne room has consequences. He is curious about Eragon. More precisely, he is curious about what Eragon represents, the return of the riders, the balance of power, the question of what obligations flow in which directions. Saphira sits beside Eragon without being asked, close enough that her warmth presses against his arm. By the time they leave, Hrothgar has granted Eragon formal adoption into Clan Ingedam, Oryx clan, the clan of smiths and mountain builders. It is not a small gesture. It is a political declaration that the king of the dwarves has chosen a side. On the walk back, Saphira tells Eragon to wear Zarok openly. The sword has a history, yes. That history is not Eragon's. What he does with it is what will matter. Arya recovers faster than any human would. By the third day she is on the training ground with a sword, moving with a precision and speed that makes the Varden warriors stop to watch. She is an elf, centuries old, trained since childhood in ways that have no equivalent in human martial tradition. She challenges Eragon. He fights her as well as he has ever fought anyone. She is better. She ends it with the flat of her blade against his jaw, light as a question, and tells him he has passed. He is not sure what he has passed. He knows he wants to understand her better. Arya calls him to a hillside outside Trondheim in the quieter hours before dawn. She tells him what happened, the full account. The shade called Durza found her at a crossroads, killed the two Varden agents traveling with her, Phelan and Glennon, and took her to Gilead. She was there for months. She does not enumerate what those months contained. She does not need to. She asks about the ring Eragon wears, the one with the blue stone, Brom's ring. He tells her where it came from. She is still for a moment. That ring is called a yaw. Among the elves, it is given only to the most trusted allies, the deepest friends. Queen Islanzadi gave it to Brom. The fact that Brom gave it to no one, carried it until the moment of his death, and left it in Eragon's possession is, she does not finish the sentence. But her expression changes. She tells him he must go to Alesmara, the elven forest, Du Weldon Varden. There is a teacher there who has been waiting, she says, for someone who may never come. She believes that person is Eragon. He visits Murtagh in the cell they have given him, which is less a cell than a private library with a locked door. Murtagh sits reading, and when Eragon enters he looks up with an expression Eragon has never seen on him before. Something close to peace. He says, this is the first place he has been in his life where no one is actively trying to use him. The books are good. The food is adequate. He has not had to kill anyone in days. By the standards of his life so far, this is luxury. He mentions Naswada. Ajihad's daughter has visited him. He describes her with a specific quality of attention that Eragon notices and files away without knowing why it matters. It will matter, later, in ways neither of them can see yet. The alarm comes in the deep hours. A dwarf scout, dust-covered and breathing hard, delivers the report to a room that immediately becomes a war council. Ajihad, Arya, Oric, Jormungandr, they gather over maps of the tunnel network beneath Farthen Dûr. An Urgal army, a full day's march away, moving through the ancient dwarven tunnels toward Trondheim. The tunnels are narrow, designed for dwarves, not for the massed movement of Urgal forces. Ajihad's plan is to use that. Seal the side passages with magic and with stone. Funnel the Urgals into Farthen Dûr itself, where the open space neutralizes their advantage in the tunnels, and where the Varden and dwarves together can meet them on ground of their own choosing. None of them sleep again that night. The battle fills Farthen Dûr from wall to wall. Urgals pour through the tunnel mouths in waves. Massive, armored, moving with the momentum of an army that has marched a long way and arrived ready to break something. The Varden and dwarf warriors meet them at the tunnel exits and push. Eragon fights in the center of it, magic and Zarok both, Arya's arrows finding gaps in the Urgal lines with a precision that is almost mechanical. Saphira tears through the open air above, and for the first time breathes fire, a column of it that lights the crater like a second sun for a fraction of a second and leaves Urgals scattering from the heat. Then Durza finds Eragon. The shade that Murtagh shot between the eyes in Gilead did not die. Shades cannot be killed by conventional means. The demon inside the human body simply retreats and reassembles. Durza came back. He has been waiting for Eragon specifically, and when he finds him in the chaos of the battle, everything else becomes secondary. Eragon has faced stronger opponents. He has never faced something that does not feel pain. Durza drives him back across the crater floor, step by step, sword against sword, his speed and strength completely beyond what a human body should contain. Eragon's magic keeps getting blocked. Whatever he attempts, the shade anticipates or absorbs. Arya breaks from the battle to provide cover, but a sweep of Durza's power sends her tumbling down through the outer wall of Trondheim's upper level. She falls. Saphira dives to intercept. Eragon is alone with the shade and running out of options. He does the only thing left. He runs, not away but toward Trondheim, up through its levels, the shade seconds behind him, pulling Urgals after in his wake. They burst into the central hall. Above them, catching all available light, Isidar Mithram hangs in the dark like a captive star. Durza's blade tears across Eragon's back. The cut runs diagonally from his right shoulder to his left hip. Eragon falls, nearly blinded by pain. Dras moves in to finish him. Then the chamber erupts above them. Arya and Saphira smash through Isidar Mithram. The star sapphire bursts apart. Thousands of fragments rain into the chamber. Dras looks up, caught off guard. For one instant, the shade leaves himself exposed. Eragon summons the last of his strength. "Breezinger!" he cries, setting Zarok ablaze. He drives the sword into Dras' heart. The shade screams with more than one voice. The spirits trapped within him tear themselves free. They rise like smoke and vanish into the darkness. Dras falls, finally dead. Eragon collapses beside him. Wounded and drained, he loses consciousness. He does not see what follows. Arya casts a spell to arrest their fall. Saphira, Arya, and the shards stop above the floor. Arya lowers them safely. Isidar Mithram lies shattered. Dras' hold over the Urgles breaks. The clans turn on one another. There is darkness first. Then there are memories that are not his, the Shade's memories, flooding through the contact his sword made at the moment of killing. Violence, cruelty, years of it, the accumulated history of a body used by demons as an instrument. He is drowning in it. He can no longer locate himself inside it. Then something else arrives. A presence, vast and still, old in a way that makes even Arya's ancient mind seem young. Amber gold, warm, carrying a resonance like music heard through stone. It finds Eragon in the dark and holds him still. The pain stops. The drowning stops. The presence speaks. It names itself Astado Chedawa, the morning sage, the cripple who is whole. It tells Eragon to come to Alesmera. It tells him there are answers waiting, about everything Brum knew and did not have time to pass on. It tells him the road leads through the elven forest, and that Arya already knows the way. Then it withdraws, and Eragon is alone in the dark, and for the first time in months, the dark feels like rest rather than threat. He wakes to Angela sitting beside his bed with a cup of something warm, watching him with the calm expression of someone who has kept vigil over worse. Outside, Farthen Dûr is quiet. He has been unconscious for a day and a half. Saphira is there, bandaged along her left wing, her eyes a calm whirling gold. Arya stands at the far wall, arm in a sling, looking at him with an expression that takes him a moment to read. It is relief worn thin by effort. Murtagh sits on a bench, bruised but intact, grinning with the particular brightness of someone who has won something they did not expect to win. The Urgles are gone. The Varden held. Dras is dead. Eragon reaches back and finds the scar. A ridge of permanently raised skin, smooth as old leather. He presses it experimentally. No pain, just sensation, and the understanding that this will never be otherwise. Murtagh looks at him steadily. "Now you're like me," he says. He does not say it cruelly. Eragon thinks about Brom. About what Brom would make of this room, this mountain, this outcome. He believes the old man would find something to criticize and something to quietly take pride in the same breath, the way he always did. He thinks about Alesmera, about a teacher who has been waiting in a forest for someone who might never come. But the road forward is clear for the first time since Carvajal. The boy who left that village thinking he understood the shape of the world is gone. What replaced him is harder, and more uncertain, and far better equipped for what comes next. The story of Eragon is not over. It has only just found its direction.